Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, alongside Father Joe Grimaldi, and we would like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Well, this one is just for the friends of the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Going on right now at Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, you can enjoy the opportunity to build your Lincoln. That's right. Visit our showroom in Southfield, Michigan, or simply log on to starlincoln.com. You can build your Lincoln Corsair. How about a Nautilus, the Aviator, or the beautiful Navigator? Experience the power of Sanctuary in your custom-ordered Lincoln vehicle. You pick the color, the interior, the wheels, and you can choose between gas or your plug-in hybrid. The benefits that come from owning a Lincoln-certified pre-owned vehicle will exceed your expectations. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, located on 12 Mile Road, just east of Telegraph, in beautiful Southfield. Or you can always visit us at starlincoln.com. Star Lincoln, home of the Father Joe Star treatment. Before we even go any further, Father Joe Grimaldi leaped from his seat into the air at the end of our last podcast, which was about the Punchki, Fat Tuesday, and he went, Carnival. That's what I was trying to remember. Carnival is two words?
It comes from two words. It comes from carne and vale. So carne, meat, vale, goodbye. So goodbye, meat.
Come on, a beautiful word like that means goodbye, meat?
That's all it means. So that's why they call those parades carnivales. So
no kidding.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, all the parades on.
So wait a minute. What if I took a carnival cruise? Would I be on a meatless cruise?
Well, no, but it's related too. Because,
I know it is, yeah.
You know, when you do a carnival cruise, basically you're celebrating, and therefore, since you have to say goodbye, you're going to eat all meat. Okay.
Well, we've just destroyed the language, haven't we? We've because it sounds good.
But it's so trivial, but go ahead.
I'm driving the all-new Buick Carnival. Yeah, I mean, I was reading something here, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts on this or not, but it was Dateline February 14th. This was just on Valentine's Day, saying he wanted to promote a healthy decentralization of some aspects of church life. Pope Francis made several changes to church law granting greater authority to individual bishops conferences, and synods, okay? So he's giving a little more power to the bishops.
Right, and it's not just Eastern, but I think even the Latin Church is getting it too.
The Latin churches are getting it as well,
yeah.
Yes. What does that mean? Anything?
It's not as radical as it sounds. Basically, you know that I always look at it this way. If we want to simplify the idea of what is a bishop is a pope of his diocese, okay? Unless he does something drastically wrong, he is in charge of that diocese, and the pope can't intervene unless there's something really wrong. And so that he already has a great deal of power, if you want, in that diocese, or whatever diocese he's in. And when I say bishop, it could be archbishop as well. So, but the bishop is in charge of the diocese. The local church, as it's called at times, the diocese, is certainly a unit of the major church, which is all of the church under Rome. However, there's a certain amount of independence. What the Holy Father is stressing, I think, is that now, when a decision is made by the diocese or by the congregation of bishops throughout the United States, in certain areas, they don't have to get permission from the Holy Father. All they have to do is get confirmation, and there's a difference between permission and confirmation. Confirmation just is a stamp saying okay, whereas permission is, we need your permission to go ahead with this, whatever it is that they're deciding on. So what Francis is trying to do, I think, is to give more independence to the diocese. It'll be interesting to see what they do as far as the Eastern churches. They have to have the Pope's okay. That's not the word I'm looking for. It'll come to me eventually. But basically, they may have their own elections for a bishop. However, the Holy Father always gives his okay at the end. It's very independent, but is it completely independent? This type of thing.
The Eastern churches, it's an interesting situation that they have relative to the Pope.
Yeah, they do, because here's the thing. I'm going to say around the year 1000. I'm just generally speaking. Mm-hmm. There had to be at least about 100, I'm going to say, different churches that broke off from Rome. And then about 24 of them came back, which meant they could still do their own liturgy and have their own bishops, but they were under the Holy Father. And of course, going back to the year 1000, there's this big separation between Rome and Constantinople, so a big separation between the two churches. Mm-hmm. So you have the Orthodox, which are one of the original churches, but they are not accepting the Holy Father as their leader. And then you have the Roman Church, which is under the Pope. So about 24 or so, 24, 25 of them did come back. And so that even though they have their own practices, their own vestments, their own liturgy, they're still under the Holy Father. So they've decided to come back. So they would be similar to, the Archdiocese of Detroit, the Archdiocese of San Francisco, and so on and so forth. They would be one of those, but a little bit differently because they get to choose their own bishop.
Oh.
But the Holy Father has to okay it.
Okay. Gets a little murky in there.
A little bit, but there is a certain amount of independence.
In a simpler way, too, he also gave local bishops the authority to determine whether there is a just and necessary cause for reducing the number of masses to be said in fulfillment of a will or the legacy that was left to that church.
What do you think it means?
I think that it means that you can certainly work on the reduction in numbers of masses being said at your church.
No, okay, but a reduction in certain masses. But here's the thing. God forbid.
Just a necessary cause for reducing the number of masses to be said in fulfillment of a will or legacy left to the church. Previously, such a decision was reserved to the Vatican.
Okay. If you have millions of dollars mm-hmm. and death is upon you, you want to leave a legacy to the church.
I see.
I'm going to give the church $100,000, but I want masses said for the repose of my soul. And so these masses have to be said. Now, once that's done, it has to be fulfilled. You cannot say, well, the guy's been dead for 20 years. Why are we still doing this? But anyway.
Well, wait a minute. Now we found the topic that we find within the topic. There we go. I'm so glad I found this.
But it doesn't mean that we're going to...
From the beginning.
We're not going to reduce the number of masses that we say in church. It's the number of masses that we are obliged to say for Mr. Jones because he left $100,000.
Uh-huh.
And for $10 donation, you could have one mass said. So we have to do all these masses. Well, do we still have to do them even though the person has been dead for 30 years?
Well, I would think so. The repose of the soul, yeah. I mean, better after than...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you've got...
I think it's fascinating. I think this is... All right.
It's not that he left the money for one particular priest, okay, because the one particular priest could not say all the masses for that much money, okay, because that would be, I don't even know, I couldn't even multiply it. So, but if they promised 1,000 masses would be said for the repose of the soul of Mr. Jones,
Uh-huh.
they're going to discuss how to limit the number of masses that have to be said, even though there's a legacy for it.
All right.
You see, because once a donor gives a gift, that gift has to be honored. So if you say, I'm giving you this microphone for in honor of Mr. Jones, you better say it's in honor of Mr. Jones. And you better use it for whatever they wanted you to use it.
So it's like your own will and trust. It's sort of along that line.
Yeah, but it's a spiritual will.
Well, yes, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. In other words, like, I want this to go to my nephew, John, and only John. Only John has a total appreciation for this.
Yeah.
This microphone that Father Grimaldi talked on.
Yeah.
He would come into this room and say, what was the mic Father Joe Grimaldi used? That mic. Aha, change my will. That's going to my nephew. He really liked that microphone. So that's sort of the legacy. That's the easiest way for me to define legacy in my
now
world.
Put that on a spiritual level instead of material, so it's no longer a thing. It's the masses that are being said. Now, how many masses
does
take care of a person whose soul is in purgatory? I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
So if a person left $100,000 just for masses to be said for Mr. Jones, but Mr. Jones has been dead for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, do we continue doing these masses for his repose? Do we get other priests to do them so we could get the number of masses that are involved? Or do we remove the obligation of, I don't know how many masses, let's say 100,000 masses.
Yeah.
Instead of 100,000, we're going to do 50,000.
Well, do you realize that 50,000 masses, I mean, even that, I mean, I shouldn't, that's almost impossible for one church to be able to do.
This is why they're discussing it.
Well, now it makes total sense. I had no idea that their use of the word legacy left to the church now is a highlight in yellow description for me. Okay. I had no idea, because this sentence reads totally different to me now that I read, for reducing the number of masses to be said in fulfillment of a will or legacy left to the church.
Correct.
Previously, such a decision was reserved to the Vatican.
Right.
Now it makes sense. I thought that the legacy was this church was always famous for having a 7, a 9, and an 11, and a 4 o'clock on a Saturday.
Yeah.
After we've looked at the number of people attending the 7 o'clock, we've decided that, well, that's part of the legacy. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to have the 9, the 11, and the 4 o'clock on Saturday. That's what I thought he were talking about.
No, you don't need the permission of the bishop to do that. So
okay, you can just do that as a pastor.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
But the legacy, masses, that's a different thing. So I leave $100,000. I'm just using a number here to say 100,000 masses for Jim Jones.
Well, you know what my next question is.
Yeah.
How many times have you been asked, or has somebody ponied up a dollar amount to you as a pastor to create a legacy of masses?
No, I personally haven't done it, but I know it does happen.
Oh, okay.
And it's usually done on a higher level. It's done with the archbishop, or they leave it in their will that they are giving this money, but they want masses to be said. See, ordinarily, the amount of money that people give to have a mass said for someone is only about $10, okay? Because you can't pay for a mass, but they give a gift of $10.
Surely, yeah.
Now, if a person says, I'm going to give you 1,000, but it's only one mass, so you get 1,000 for doing just one mass. But then you have a guy that says, I'm going to give you 1,000, but I want
100 masses.
More than that, yeah. So that means you have to fulfill that, and so
if you take the check.
Yeah.
If you say no, thank you, I'd prefer not to do that, but I will certainly fulfill your wishes over the next few months, and every time I see you, you may want to remind me to keep your father in my prayers. I'd rather operate that way personally, but...
Well, that's what I hope the intention is.
Right.
But usually when somebody comes in to have a Mass said, it's traditional in the church that they give a certain amount of money. And usually that amount of money varies. It used to be $5. Now it's $10. And it was meant to not only have the Mass said, but it was meant for the upkeep of the priest who was saying it so that he could have a green salad that night, this type of stuff. So there was a reason why they did it, but they did it that way. They just said, okay. So now people say, what is the offering to have a Mass said? That's what they say. So that this way they're not saying how much does it cost, but what is the offering? And so usually the secretary says, $10 is fine. But if a person says, I want to give $25, that's fine too. So there is no set amount to speak of. But just for the sake of some sort of bookkeeping and religious order, they just say, well, look, $10, that's what we usually ask for. So
that's interesting. But it does happen that people will leave large amounts of money, possibly up to $100,000, to say masses for the repose of their soul.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And that is what we would call a legacy.
No, a legacy is anything you leave.
Well, I know that, but that would be under the bracket of or. Well, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you leave a legacy to your nephew of, for the next 30 days he can have lunch at Big Boys. Okay, I'm just making.
Well, they're getting a little pricey. No, I can't say that. No. Getting
the legacy you left behind. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a gracious legacy, but it's a nice legacy. I'll have lunch at.
I have so many questions about this now. But it's just. It seems to me, when you pass away, you pass away.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you have the most incredibly big, and I don't care if it's climate controlled with fountains all around it, why does anyone really need a mausoleum? Doesn't that sort of say, look at me, this is where I'm buried? When you pass away...
Nobody needs that, but it's different than a legacy, though.
No, I know, but that's just another thing that I think about when I think about a legacy. Somebody wanting so much in death. Why not give and do all of that in life?
Oh, okay. Well, that's another thing, too. But here we're just speaking about the masses, and I think they use that word, but it doesn't have to be used because it's not particular to that particular situation.
I would think that most people don't know about that part of the Catholic Church, or maybe they do. Maybe I'm just... this is the first time I've ever really put that sort of...
Because you like the word legacy.
I just read about it today, and I mean, it overlapped into our discussion about the Pope and the Pope handing off or allowing bishops, especially in the Eastern Church, but not unique to the Eastern Church, also to the Latin churches as well, that the bishops can do more. And then I saw that subset in there about the legacy masses, and I, like I said, showing how bright I am, thought it was literally the masses that would be said over the weekend. And then you taught me about the legacy today, or what we call the legacy.
It's not always called the legacy.
I know that, but for this conversation, this podcast,
that's what they wrote. Yeah.
And we're not arguing, by the way. That was from my wife.
No, I realize that.
No,
but you left the will for, instead of a legacy, you left the will for having masses said.
But I find it interesting that people are that concerned about going to the afterglow, the next stage, the party after this one, that they need to supplement it with maybe 1,000 masses to pray for the soul of Ken Calvert.
Well, people take stuff like that seriously.
And I'm not taking it seriously. But why would they be so worried that they need 1,000 masses? Am I asking a really stupid question there?
No, it's not stupid. No. That seems... It's just it depends on the individual person. I mean, some people take that so seriously that they're willing to give whatever money as if money could buy you into heaven. That's not the way it works. But
that's kind of where I was
maybe
going.
they feel that if I have masses said for me, maybe I'll be able to get out of purgatory in record time. I don't know.
Do you know that if I did that, I would be doing it more for me and not for the person that had passed away? In other words, it would really make me meditate the entire Mass and give just every ounce of energy I have toward the life, the soul, the memory that I have of a sibling or a dear friend or my parents.
By the way, usually people don't have that advertised. That's why you haven't heard of it.
Oh, I bet you're right.
Yeah, they just don't.
Like,
for example,
or as we say in my business, they don't broadcast it.
No, they don't. But even a $5 donation for Mass, they don't tell people that's what it is. They just, I had Mass said for so-and-so. That's all they say. Yeah. Now, in some cases, it might be $5, it might be $10, it could be $1,000.
Right.
When you have somebody of means, a person of means, they very often might give, and not to have 1,000 Masses said, but they'll say, listen, I would like to give this church $10,000. Could you say Mass once a month for the next year? So, as simple as that. But I don't want this advertised, but you need the money for the church. I'd like to have the Masses said once a month, and that'll be just for this year. So that happens a lot. More than we think, okay? People do come in after somebody dies, usually right after a funeral. They come into the office. Can I give you some money to have Masses said? And so they sit there and they negotiate a time for the Mass, and they said, yeah, I would like to see the 11 o'clock Mass my mother mentioned for the rest of this year. So anyway.
I love learning stuff, as you know.
Well, we all are learning.
Yeah.
My God.
If you don't learn something, then the day is wasted.
That's right.
Day is lost without learning and laughing.
I know. See all I learned
Ken
about
Calvert,
birds
see there? Maybe that'll be on my tombstone. A day is lost without learning and laughing and eating.
Eating's important, especially punch keys at this time.
Yeah, punch keys again, ladies and gentlemen. How about a little prayer to take us home?
Yeah, as they say, we're still within the season of this horrible COVID with all of its variants. Heavenly Father, when this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be, we were called to be, we hoped to be, and may we stay that way better for each other because of the worst. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. God bless you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
We'd like to remind you to share the Father Joe Podcast with your friends. You can reach Father Joe at frjoepodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Facebook or say, Alexa, play the Father Joe Podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time.